This next chapter is going to be dedicated to working with tables here in OneNote. If you've used tables in other applications like Microsoft Word, for example, or even a spreadsheet application, you know how tables are useful in keeping data organized. If you're working with figures that need to be lined up, or you've got data that needs to be in rows and columns so it's easy to understand, tables are an excellent tool. And you've got them here in OneNote. We're going to start off in this lesson by simply inserting a table. Here you can see I've got a notebook open called UC 2008A. This is our user conference scenario still. And if you've got the exercise files and you'd like to follow along, you can go to the Lesson 4 folder and open this one up. I'm on the meeting notes section right now, but I'm going to flip over to the to-do list section by clicking this tab here at the top. In a previous lesson, we added some tasks. So what we're going to do is actually add a table now by clicking in an empty space. We don't want to add a table to an existing note. So we're going to come down here and just click over to the left-hand side here where we want the table to appear. Of course, we can rearrange things later on. We can move the table around, size it. We're going to do all of those things as we move through the lessons in this chapter. Let's start, though, by inserting our table. There's a couple of different ways to do that. If you look up at the menu bar, there's an entire menu dedicated to working with tables. If I click on this, there's only one option available to me right now, and that is to insert a table. Notice the ellipses after it. I'm going to be prompted for some information. Of course, I'm going to need to choose the number of columns and rows, things that can be adjusted later on, and we will do that, like inserting extra columns and rows, deleting rows and columns, even selecting and formatting. But for now, we want to insert a table. There is a shortcut button on your standard toolbar as well. So I'm going to click out here and just show you that we've got an Insert Table button right here on the toolbar. So either way, if we choose it from the table menu or click it here, we get to choose the number of rows and columns. Now in this case, I'm not accessing a dialog box. I'm just simply going to click and drag until I get the number of rows and columns. And you can see my limit is 4 rows by 5 columns. So if you want to access the dialog box and have more options, you'll go up to the table menu and choose Insert Table from here. Now you get to choose the number of columns and rows this way. And if you wanted more columns or more rows than you had access to from the toolbar, you can type them in here. So for the columns, I'm going to go with 5 columns. I type in 5, and I'm going to click down here where it says number of rows. It's currently set to 2. I'm going to take out the 2 with my backspace key, and I'm going to need at least 5 here. So I'm going to type in 5 and click OK, which is more than the limit I saw from the toolbar. Now I've got my table that's created using some default settings. First of all, I've got 5 rows, 5 columns, each of the columns equal in width, and you can see the size of my table overall is not all that big. As we start to enter some content, we'll see some changes, and like I said, as we move through the remaining lessons in this chapter, we're going to be doing some formatting with our table. Right now, though, right up here in the very first cell, and if you're used to using a spreadsheet, we might call this cell A1. It's column A, row 1. I have a flashing cursor, and I'm just going to type in responsibilities. And you can see what's happening. The first column gets wider to accommodate my text, and that's perfect. However, later on we're going to make a few changes so that we've got a title row at the top, and then we've got options down below for rows and column labels as well as the data that's going to go in there. All right, right below responsibilities here, I'm going to go down a line. I'm going to type in my name. I'm going to go down to the next one, type in another name, and on the next line, one more name. And over here, I'm going to put in some labels. I'm going to type in workshop, workshops, there we go, schedule, and you can see the columns accommodate the width, guest speakers. And over here in the last column, I'm going to put a label in for social event. And now it's just a matter of assigning these responsibilities by going into the cells and adding some kind of marker. So for example, I'm going to go down here for myself. I'm going to be responsible for workshops. I'm going to put in a capital X. But I'm also responsible for helping out with the social events. I'll put an X in there. Now for Karen, she's responsible for a couple of things as well, the schedule. And she'll be helping me out with the social event. And then Sam down here, he's going to be responsible for the guest speakers. And I'm thinking maybe we need another person to help out with some of this stuff. So for now, we've got our table. Using the default settings, we were able to select our columns and our rows. You can see as we enter data, the columns accommodate our largest item, and there are certain defaults that we can change, like the alignment of our text, the text itself, and the font that's being used, and the font size. So as we move through the upcoming lessons in this chapter, we're going to start making adjustments to our table to make it a little more pleasing to the eye. It's all coming up.